I'm going to now go to question 154, Deputy Donnchadh Ó Laoghaire.
Tánaiste, over the course of many, many years, it seems to me that many Air Corps personnel, primarily young working class people who took jobs in the maintenance department of the Air Corps, were exposed to very hazardous, very dangerous conditions with very, very little, effectively no safety precautions whatsoever, certainly nothing by way of masks or inadequate ventilation and so on. There are huge concerns about the health implications that has had for that former personnel, and I'll detail that later. But I want to ask you specifically, have you engaged, as I asked last time, with any of those affected and their representative groups, and how do you intend to ensure that their health is safeguarded and supported?
Thanks, Deputy, and thank you for raising the matter. Thank you for constructively discussing it with me at the last PQ session on defence matters, and I have had engagement with my officials to try and tease through some of this since we last discussed this as well. As I did set out the last time this was raised in the House, and I feel obliged to repeat now, any discussion that we can have, or certainly any comments that I make, is necessarily restricted by the existence of ongoing litigation that's active before the courts. But I would like to say that I do want to see resolution here in relation to this, and I am advised that there's currently active engagement between the State Claims Agency and litigants to determine if mutually agreeable resolutions can be found to their cases, and I really do want to see that happen. And I encourage the State Claims Agency to continue that approach, as I know they will, because I do think trying to bring this issue to a resolution that works is important. Obviously, the ultimate priority for me and the ultimate priority for the Defence Forces is the protection of the health and well-being of members of the Defence Forces in carrying out their essential service to the state. It's also important to me that, where possible, litigation of this nature could be concluded on reasonable terms agreeable to all parties and spare people having to go other routes. In the event that this cannot be achieved, the matter will fall to be determined by courts, but again, I need to remain fully cognizant of my own position of that litigation. I think it would be valuable in terms of the engagement process that is now genuinely underway, that it be allowed the opportunity to proceed without prejudice, and to see if we can get to a point where there is an achievable outcome that's acceptable to all parties. The question of alleged or potential historic exposure to chemicals in the Air Corps is a matter of considerable importance to me, and I do remain with an open mind in terms of future discussions and engagement. I have made the point that in the past there have been other areas where, even if the state didn't accept liability, people did try to meet the health needs of those impacted, and I have asked that my officials continue to give thought to that issue as well. I've asked them to keep me updated on the progress in relation to the SCA engagement and those further questions that I've asked them as well. But I suppose I'm saying in the Dáil today that I would like that time to be given to that process of engagement that I genuinely believe is now underway.
Deputy Ó Laoghaire.
I have to say I don't accept that for 1 second. I don't accept that for 1 second, right? Because we have, in this House, over many years, had issues where things have been proceeding through the court, and the state rightly doesn't intervene as between the two different parties, or try to disturb the processes of the courts. But that is totally separate from whether the state itself identifies that there was a policy issue and a need for a policy response in relation to a category of people without interfering in the court process. That's happened numerous times, like in terms of the Magdalen laundries and different things like that, where schemes were set up. So there is nothing at this moment in time to prevent you, without interfering in court cases, engaging with representatives of those who are affected to say, well, look, what can we do in terms of an examination of the health outcome? So the best example, and it's maybe not perfect, but the best example is the example I gave from Australia, the study of health outcomes of aircraft maintenance personnel, SHOAMP, which identified what was the implications, because they were facing serious issues. I'll let the Minister respond again.
Minister Tánaiste.
Thanks, Ciara. Look, I mean, maybe I wasn't clear. I thought I was saying something similar. So there's a process ongoing in relation to the State Claims Agency, trying to see if the legal cases can be resolved in a way that is to the satisfaction of both parties. In addition to that, I've also asked my officials, on the basis of the last exchange we had, to give consideration to other actions that may be able to take to try and meet the health needs of people. That's the point I'm making. So there is an engagement process underway now between the State Claims Agency, which, let's be honest, is a delegated function for me, so they act on behalf of the state, on behalf of the government, to see if we can get this to a position where those who have been impacted are satisfied and that the state is satisfied too. And all I'm suggesting today, and constraining myself in not wanting to say anything unhelpful or that cuts across that process, is that I just want to give that a little bit of time, and that I'm happy to continue to engage constructively on it. I've asked my officials to continue to think further on some of the points that I've made to them, much of which has been influenced by the points you made to me in this House about 6 weeks ago.
Well, look, I suppose Tánaiste should just put you on notice. I'll be bringing this up again in 6 weeks, and 6 weeks after that too. And I am going to continue to pursue this because, look, you know, I would like if we could bracket the State Claims Agency part and put that to one side, because that's not what I'm talking about, and that needs to proceed. And I hope that that works out well, or as well as possible for those affected. But one of the key points here is not everyone can afford to take the state to court. Not everyone can afford that. And to talk to, like, I mean, one of the organisations representing people is ACCAS, and they've identified, and look, they're not clinicians, I'm not a clinician, but they've identified 97 untimely deaths, and they've used that phrase very, very, I think, deliberately and carefully in the context of, you know, it will take a health study to identify what can be connected or what is connected to chemical exposure. But it seems to me, given that in Australia it was found a direct connection, in the Netherlands it was found there was a direct connection. These men, and it was almost exclusively men, I think there might have been one or two women, were exposed to very dangerous chemicals, and a lot of them are really, really sick, and many of them have died, and their families and their friends believe prematurely. This is very serious stuff. So I really do encourage you, engage with ACCS, with any other relevant people, to try and find a policy solution aside from the court's solution.
Well, thanks very much. So, no, look, that's useful in terms of the differentiation you make between the two processes. And I think the point you're making to me is there are a number of people who are not involved in legal proceedings and may never wish to be involved in legal proceedings for whatever reasons, but that there are health issues either that have impacted them or are impacting them, and there's concerns that their families have in relation to that, and the need to examine the health cause and effect, I suppose, for want of a phrase, and what other jurisdictions have done. That's something I will undertake to do, and I'll come back to you, and I'll expect you to be asking me about this again in the next